Welcome to this event today. 2 days ago, we were discussing with the French physician Etienne Klein. He was sadly surprised to see people with no scientific, let's say, education and no strong scientific culture opposing science, innovation, and progress publicly. We saw that all the time. I believe that we should let experts like scientists and engineers speak more. That's why our meeting today with MIT is very, very important for us. And so we are really delighted to welcome you in this fourth edition. In this fourth edition of the MIT Symposium in Paris. It's an honor for Bouygues organization to partner and co-host this significant event. We have had links with MIT since many years now. In fact, every year we do a back to school with some C-level participant of the group. We were there with Marie-Luce and Vince and Eddie Woods last September. It's always important for us to smell the future. Big thanks for the MIT team today, especially Olivier, John, Katharina, but also speakers like Pattie, Kathleen, and Ben. They came from far away to talk about their insight in the future of work in the digital era. We learn a lot from them. Also, a special thank you to Cap Digital because of their insight and support. Half of the innovative startup present today have been highlighted. This shows how active is Europe when we talk about future of work. This is also why we co-founded 5 years ago Impact AI, because we are convinced that AI represents a key challenge for business. Things like rules, new ideas, ethics, and tools are big topics for all of us. Thank you for joining us. Seeing over 600 sign up either in person or online made us realize just how vital this subject is today for us. Now I would like to welcome John to come up and talk a little bit more about MIT.
So I just flew in a couple of days ago from Korea, so I will say my name, John Roberts, and I will bow. It's wonderful, and yes, that's right, you're supposed to clap. So it really is wonderful to be here today. Can I have the slides? Or do I need to forward it? Oh, go back. Excellent. So this is a picture that was taken the last time that I was in Paris, and it was also at an event that was sponsored by Bouygues. By the way, thank you very much for sponsoring this event. And it's taken from a perspective that's a little bit unusual. Does anybody here recognize it, other than the people who were there? Where is it from? It's from the rooftop of Cartier. It's near Place Vendôme. And this picture reminds me of the joy that my colleagues and I felt on this day. We had just had a wonderful meeting. We had had a week of getting to know each other better, of meeting so many people here in Paris that were interesting and engaging. And it was just an example of connection, community, and really having some kind of purpose. This morning I had a purpose. It was to run to Sacré-Cœur from my hotel. And you might not know this, but there's a hill. It's a really steep hill. And so I ran up that hill, and I was thinking about how, I guess I should have known, because it looked like it was high up, but I thought maybe there would be a trail that would go around and get higher up. But I thought it was appropriate because we really do take delight in doing challenging things. So I'm going to use this as my background and just get started off. Part of my thanks to Bouygues is to use the color orange through the entire talk, and you like that. So I just learned yesterday that that color orange is inspired by the paint that's used to paint things that are made out of steel and iron so they don't rust. Is that right? Okay. Very good. So why MIT? And Christoph mentioned a little bit about how we have come this long distance to engage. Another question is, why is it that people go to MIT, and why do they engage with MIT? And I'm going to cut straight to the chase and just characterize it as to shape and create our future. There are opportunities for participating in research, opportunities for learning about new technologies, opportunities for having the kind of conversations that inform you or allow you to inform others, but explore common interest. And people from MIT go out into the world and do the same thing, and that's part of what's happening here today. So this is a picture of our president. She has been in the position for less than 1 year, and soon after taking the presidency, Sally Kornbluth put forward a vision that included for having big impact in the next 10 or 15 years in areas of climate, AI, and biotech. And I think it's a guarantee that at least one, probably two of those impact you today. So why ILP and Startup Exchange? There are lots of different ways that you can engage with MIT, and the question is, why would you do it through us? But let me just start off by saying we are about connections, relationships, and global impact. Who are we? That's probably an important question. So we are 57 people, diverse in expertise, diverse in experience, and diverse in cultural background. And this is a picture of us this summer. So you might also ask the question, why are we so darn happy? So what do we do? This is one of the things that makes us happy. We amplify MIT's expansive global network and create an inclusive community. And what does inclusive mean in this case? So with respect to MIT, we work across all of the institute. With respect to global corporations, we work across all industry sectors. And with respect to MIT-connected startups, we work with any and all technologies in terms of what the startups are based on. So where do we engage? We do it locally, and when I say locally, I mean MIT. When we do it globally, sometimes it's Paris, sometimes it's other places as well, and then we also engage virtually. So how do we engage? It's hard to reduce it down to just 3 things, but if I had to, I would say it's through publicity. So we get the message out of what's going on at MIT so people have some concept of whether there's something that's particularly relevant to them. We do it through events. So events like these, we do about 10 events at MIT and 10 in other geographical locations, most of them international. And we also continue to do the webinars that we did during the pandemic, although a much smaller number. At the same time, as Christoph mentioned, we live stream out to larger audiences almost every single event that we do. And then there's custom meetings. And I want to be really clear about what custom meetings are. We curate those meetings based on common interest. We schedule those meetings, and we facilitate those meetings. So it's very resource intensive and very rich. But there is a context that's incredibly important for everything that we do, and that's the innovation ecosystem. So from the perspective of this 5-stakeholder model, you need to have in a healthy ecosystem startups or entrepreneurs, risk capital, corporations, government, and academics. And in our case, we focus in on MIT. So who do we bring to the table? We bring more than 200 corporations that we're working with on a regular basis at any given time. And if you look at where they come from, here are the top 5 countries in terms of the number of members. And you can see that France is number 4 there. So it's US, which you might expect, Japan, which you might not, Korea, France, and Brazil. And there are a lot of fast followers to this. We have a presence in about 32 countries today. MIT. So what is 1,000? There's, of course, many more than 1,000 people at MIT. This is just focusing in on faculty at MIT. It's more than 1,000. I think it's somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200 now. And if you look across the different colleges and schools, this is where they come from. About 60% of them come from engineering and science, and then about 40% from humanities, management, architecture, and the brand new Schwarzman College of Computing. And for startups, again, this number 1,000 figures prominently, total coincidence. This is the number of startups that we have at steady state that are both designated as MIT connected and that we have a good information on that they're ready to engage with corporations in a productive way through the way that we set up meetings. And one way to characterize startups is when they were founded. And if you look at this chart, you can see with a little bit of time that more than half of them were founded between 4 years ago and 8 years ago, which is maybe what you would expect when we say that they're ready for engaging with corporations. So since when have we been doing all of these things? For the connection between MIT and corporations, we've been doing this for 75 years. I think in the program there's a logo that actually has a 75. That's because we're celebrating that fact. And then with regards to connecting startups with corporations and also preparing startups in a number of different ways, that's been about 8 years. Loosely speaking, this is MIT ILP, or the Industrial Liaison Program, and Startup Exchange. And my name is John Roberts. I won't bow again, don't worry. My name is John Roberts, and I'm the Interim Executive Director of MIT Corporate Relations, and it is my goal that next time that I come, it will be permanent. So I want to say a few things about Kendall Square. And if you remember nothing else from what I've said today, remember that Kendall Square is very high density innovation. And let me describe that a little bit for you. That doesn't look like high density innovation. That was in the 1980s. And I lived right here because I was a graduate student at MIT at the time. And I can tell you that in that square, once you got off of campus, which is on the right-hand side here, there wasn't a whole lot happening. There was, when we first got there, there was one restaurant, and I couldn't afford it. But this is what it looked like 20 years later. A lot of growth happened in 20 years. And at that time, people might have felt like, oh, wow, this place really exploded. But if you look at it in retrospect from the subsequent 20 years, you come to recognize that actually it was exploding. It was continuing to explode. Many of the buildings that were built at this time that filled in some of those gaps have actually been taken down, and bigger ones have been put up in their place. And all of the other gaps, it seems, have also seen development. So we work here. This is the east end of Kendall Square. This is the east end of MIT campus. These are just representative global corporations that are right there in that small space. And there are thousands of startups that exist here. And both corporations and startups pay a premium to be right there in that space for a number of reasons. I also want to give some comment to the way that we support entrepreneurship. And there are many complementary programs. And it's really important to understand where we fit in if you're looking to engage with Startup Exchange in particular. This is a chart that we like to show, this notion that you can start with inspiration and you can lead through a number of stages and escape MIT, the MIT world, and be an entity, a startup entity that goes on to do great things. But there's a tremendous amount of support. In inspiration, there are a number of organizations. This is just a few. Same thing for exploration. Same thing for fundamentals. There are 60 entrepreneurship courses for students, and there's about 40 that are available for people outside of MIT. And then there's application and getting closer, there's acceleration, and this is where we fit in. We're part of the continuity once a startup has been launched. But it's also important to note that there are other pathways that lead entrepreneurship to being part of Startup Exchange. So for example, if a student graduates and goes off, and maybe they're part of some other innovation ecosystem, they build a startup, they are an MIT-connected startup as well. In closing, essentially, I want to just make a couple of points that are in some ways a reiteration. ILP and Startup Exchange are intimately integrated. Each one is better because of the other. And part of the power of what we do is that we're in a vibrant innovation ecosystem, both locally and also with all of the international companies that we work with. So whenever we go someplace, we pick up and we drop off and we become part of that innovation ecosystem, even if it's only for a day or 2 or 3. And then last point, people who engage with us, they are on a global stage, and that's where we get to connections, relationships, global impact. So I want to thank you very much, and thank again Bouygues for the wonderful hospitality here and the lovely time that we've been able to spend together. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, Christophe. We're excited to get this day started. The theme we chose this year is the future of work. And that's a theme that really sits at the intersection between technology and people. So again, welcome to you all here in person in this wonderful auditorium, and thank you again, Bouygues, for hosting this event. And welcome to people online as well. We have a lot of people connected who stayed up late or got up pretty early to watch us, so welcome to this presentation. As John said, we love these types of regional events, and the reason why we love them is because it gives us a chance to bring a piece of the very innovative innovation ecosystem that John talked about and bring it to Paris and bring it to Korea and bring it to Japan and around the world. And you have a chance to interact with that ecosystem. That's the purpose of today. We really would like you to interact, and there's 2 messages I have in terms of interaction and engagement with that ecosystem for you. The first one is we've put together a dedicated session this afternoon for startups, and this is a big deal. So we really encourage you to attend this session and engage with the brilliant startups that you will hear on stage later on this afternoon. And second thing, as the audience here and people online, you have a chance to interact with the speakers by using Pigeonhole, which is a tool that you can access to by scanning this device, this QR code. If you scan the QR code, you'll be able to ask questions to our wonderful speakers today. So having said that, I'm delighted to kick off the very first talk. And that first talk, we chose a theme that is probably coming back over and over again with all our industry members. That's the theme of artificial intelligence. We know that AI will drastically change the way we work, the way we interact, the way we learn as well. So we decided to kick off today, this morning, with one of our experts in artificial intelligence, and we're delighted to have Professor Pattie Maes with us. Pattie is a professor at MIT's Media Lab. She runs specifically a group at the Media Lab called the Fluid Interfaces Research Group, and the aim of that group is to radically reinvent the human-machine experience. Coming from a background herself in artificial intelligence, Pattie is particularly interested in the topic of cognitive enhancement, and I think she will tell us a little bit more about that. Her research focus more recently has been on artificial intelligence and generative AI in particular. So we're very excited to have you with us, Pattie. Welcome to the stage, and we're excited to hear whether or not AI will live up to its promise. Pattie.
Bonjour, good morning, everybody. So I'm one of the 1,000+ faculty at MIT that John talked about, and I work at what I think is one of the most innovative labs at MIT, the MIT Media Laboratory. But originally, I actually grew up not that far away from here in Brussels and got my PhD in artificial intelligence over 30 years ago. And what is interesting is that given that I have been in the field of AI more than most of you, or for more years than most of you, I've seen many summers and winters of artificial intelligence where there were a lot of expectations. That's how we talk about the summers of AI, followed by some disappointment about the impact that AI had in real life. So I want to talk today about whether today's AI will live up to its big expectations. Oops. So one of the problems with artificial intelligence, and this has been going on for over 30 years, is that AI, when there is a promise or an opportunity to really introduce AI into a real-world context to make a difference, AI is sort of dropped into that human context without much consideration for human factors. And I believe that, and not just me, believe that has led to failures of artificial intelligence. For example, when I just started my PhD studies, expert systems were the big thing. How many people here were around then or paying attention to AI? At least a couple. So expert systems were a big deal. And companies like Bouygues, that type of company, was very interested in how these AI systems could help with diagnosis and planning and scheduling and all these types of things. And these systems in laboratory settings actually performed very well. Of course, they were built differently than today's systems. Today's systems use machine learning to acquire their knowledge. And back then, we would hand code rules, basically, that would encode the knowledge of the system. But they actually performed very well. So we had, for example, medical information systems that were designed to help doctors make diagnoses and so on. And one of the problems in practice with these systems was that once the engineers had built the expert system, they would just give it to a doctor and say, here, now use this system to help you improve your diagnosis. And it turned out that there was a big lack of trust by the target user, the end user of that system, in this case, the doctor, but it might have been an engineer working with the system and so on, because that doctor or that target user was not involved in developing the AI. So they did not know, like, what are the limitations? What can this system do and not do? Where should I not rely on it? The target user could not update the knowledge of this AI, and if there were some gaps or something, the explanations were imperfect. The fit into the workflow was unclear, and maybe most importantly, people have a sense of human pride and sort of job fulfillment. They get satisfaction from their jobs. So if you give an expert system to a doctor who has studied, like my father was a doctor for 13 years, he studied, and then you give them an expert system and say, here, this system may help you make your diagnosis and improve your diagnosis. People are not, I mean, that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to study for so much time and then have a system sort of second guess you or sort of replace a lot of the most satisfactory aspects of our jobs. So we really have to think about these human factors when we introduce AI. AI is not just a technical challenge. It is as much a human design problem as well. So for over 30 years, I've been in the field arguing that instead of calling it AI, or instead of aiming for AI, we should aim for IA instead. We should aim for augmenting people, or for basically augmenting human intelligence, rather than building systems that are supposed to match or surpass human intelligence and possibly replace humans. And unfortunately, though, most of the field is still sort of on the left-hand side of this picture. This is partially because of Turing, the person who really started the field. And Professor Eric Brynjolfsson, very insightful professor of management, until recently at MIT at the Sloan School, he just moved to Stanford Management School. He calls this the Turing trap. Basically, Turing defined AI as matching or surpassing human intelligence, and so the whole field of AI has been trying to build systems and evaluate them by seeing, like, can they surpass human intelligence? And they don't really think about what we ultimately want and need. So he argues, and I really recommend that you read this article on the Turing trap. He argues, by looking at historical data, that if you augment workers with tools, you can open up so much more opportunity than if you replace them by machines, if you automate things. But AI is still very much on that automation path, as opposed to the augmentation path. Now, today I will talk about the augmentation path of AI. How can AI amplify human intelligence? Of course, some of the things I'll talk about are things like, how can AI help with information, access, processing, etc., finding the information relevant to whatever you're thinking about, decision-making, creativity. These are the types of things that everybody thinks about when they think about AI augmenting people. However, I think we shouldn't limit ourselves to that. I think that there's a lot more that AI can do to augment people, especially if you have personal AI, which I'll talk about in a little bit. AI can actually help you with things like attention, being attentive, motivating people, helping people with memory issues. Those of us over 55 realize that your memory goes backwards, and I think AI can help with these much more personal things that really enable people to perform at optimal level, basically. Learning, well-being, emotion control, not getting angry or anxious, stressed, etc. Behavior change, being more effective communicators. I think AI will become more and more personal, and I'll show that today, and help us with all of these types of personal issues, not just decision-making and information. So in my group, we study and design AI systems together with humans. We try to optimize human plus AI systems, as opposed to first optimizing AI, making sure it's accurate, fewer hallucinations, less bias, etc., and then like dropping it into a human context. We, from the start, look at what happens when you put AI and people together. Does it really improve the performance of the combined system? So let me show you some of our studies and some of the systems that we make. We've been doing a lot of work on how AI can improve decision-making, and the issue is actually non-trivial. Of course, this is an important issue. We're constantly bombarded by information which may or may not be truthful and logical, etc. And so we have been working on this issue for a while, of systems that can help people in real time with decision making by giving them maybe a second opinion and why they think something is true or false or should be believed. And initially we built a system, we had people listen to statements of fake news, real news, and we learned that if you have an AI that helps you in the moment, that people actually improve their discernment of accurate statements versus false statements, especially if the AI explains itself. They actually did not change their opinions if the AI doesn't explain itself. So that already tells you something. People don't believe or trust the AI, which just says this statement is true or false. It has to give an explanation. But then we did another experiment and we said, well, what if the AI is wrong? What if the AI even is malicious and gives bad advice to the person, basically telling them that something that is true is false or that something that is really false is true? In red, you see how well people perform when they have a system that gives explanations about things but that misleads you, that is malicious. Less than half of the performance of working without an AI system. So in gray, we see how people perform evaluating statements and whether they are true or false without AI. In blue, we see how a person plus an AI basically performs if the AI is accurate. And in red, we show if they have a AI that misleads them, how they are so influenced, so gullible, basically, changing their own opinion half of the time in favor of the wrong opinion. So this is scary. This is really scary. People stop thinking when they are assisted by an AI. And so this is really a human factors problem again. So we have been working on systems that engage the target user. You have to engage the target user in still reasoning about a problem, because otherwise people just too easily assume that the AI is right and adopt the advice of the AI. They stop thinking for themselves. Whoops. Sorry. Next slide. I'm not sure. Yeah. So won't go over the statistics, but believe me, we do these with human subject experiments, typically over 100 people, to test all of the effects of these issues. We've also just recently published a paper on how prior beliefs about AI impact human and AI outcomes. It's not usually something we think about. We think, well, we'll build an AI, we give it to people, they use it, and it turns out that whether people believe the AI is helpful or AI is not very helpful before they engage with AI makes a huge difference. So we did another experiment where we had a group of people, we divided them in three conditions. One where we told them this AI has no motives, another group we said this AI has caring motives, and another third group, this AI has malicious or manipulative motives. In reality, they were interacting with the exact same system, ChatGPT. It turns out that then, after they interacted with this system, we asked them, like, how trustworthy is this system? Would you recommend it to other people? Is it empathetic? There was significant difference between these three different groups, purely based on what we told them in advance, even though they were just interacting with the same system. We had huge differences in the outcomes. Even more, we analyzed the conversation people had with AI, and when people believed the AI was positive, the conversation trend, trend of the affect tended towards more and more positive. When people were told initially this is a bad AI, even though it was the same AI, it became more and more negative. So this influences the entire interaction, just one thing that we told people in advance. These are not issues that AI researchers typically think about, but they are incredibly important. I would argue that we should err on the side of telling people this AI may be wrong. This AI may not be that smart, because then they will be a little bit more careful in evaluating and thinking about what suggestions the AI gives. Now, I mentioned earlier that I believe AI will become much more personal. My other background, other than artificial intelligence, is in human-computer interaction. And I believe that AI will become really a personal assistant, that in 5-10 years from now, your phone will have your personal AI running on it, augmenting your memory, augmenting your your knowledge and so on with just-in-time information. It will have sensors, so that it will be aware of what you are talking about, maybe who you are talking with, etc., and will give you real-time suggestions based on your interests, what you know, don't know, what your weaknesses are, your strengths are, and so on. So we have been building these types of systems now for a little while. For example, let me show you a system called Memoro that was designed to help people who may have memory lapses, but I think all of us suffer from that sometimes. And it consists of a wearable that can whisper behind your ear, give you some real-time information just when you need it based on your context. So let's roll the video here. So basically, you have a trigger on the finger, and then that device that can hear what you talk about, but also respond with bone conduction speakers, so it doesn't block your hearing. And we use large language models to basically predict what the next words out of your mouth will be, based on what you've said before. Just like these systems work, but then using the person's own things that they have set as the training for the model. So we're especially interested in how this can help the elderly, but really also knowledge workers, because all of us have to just remember increasing amounts of information.
Oh, and why do you do that? So we invest in biotech startups that help with rare diseases. Well, you should reach out if you're interested.
Thank you, I will. Oh wait, what was his name again?
Robert.
Hello. Hi, Grandpa. So once you're done with your walking, can you please get a dozen of eggs and a packet of bread and about 6 bananas, please?
Okay.
Okay, see you soon. Bye.
Bye. I have taken bread and eggs. I don't know the third thing I have forgotten.
Bananas.
So you can talk to your agent, or it also predicts what you will say when you're in the middle of a sentence and you can't think of something.
You know where to look for investment? Oh yes, I actually just met this guy last week. His name is Robert, and he works in Fluid Investments, and they specialize in
Rare diseases.
biotech startups working in rare diseases.
So you get the idea. We tested this system again technically, at the technical level. Can it predict the right answers, the right words that you'll say next, etc., as well as looking at usability of the system in a real conversation. The reason why we used audio is that we think it's less disruptive. We are also looking at smart glasses as a platform. So on the right, you see smart glasses that can be used to give real-time vision-based recommendations. And we also have a smart room now at the Media Lab. So if some of you are interested in working with the Media Lab, we'll welcome you to our smart room, where you can basically have a conversation, and you can employ different agents that augment the group conversation with information. You can have the definition agent, which listens to proper nouns that are talked about, like if it says Bouygues, if somebody says I come from Bouygues, the web page for Bouygues comes up, or a definition of what Bouygues is working on. You can, in addition to having that definition agent running, you can have a facts agent running, which whenever there's something mentioned, a statement about some facts, the system will give you supporting information. You can have the devil's advocate agent running, which will actually give you opposite perspectives to what a person is currently saying. So the whole conversation is recorded, also summarized. The system gives you great notes of the conversation, but you can have all these agents augmenting the conversation in real time. We also do a lot of work with AI augmenting learning, and we've been building these, or we've been looking at anthropomorphization, or when you personify an AI system as an agent, and what influence this has on the outcomes. You may have read that Meta, or Facebook, just recently announced that they will have AI systems that are personified like this as famous personalities. Meta has 3 billion users, so 3 billion users are now going to be interacting with agents that have faces. And we have been looking at the influence of the choice of the character. We did an experiment back in 2020, I think.
Today, we will learn about quantum mechanics.
We will learn about quantum mechanics.
So you get the idea. We can basically give you a personal teacher based on whoever you prefer. And we looked at, we did a study to see what the effect is of the choice of that teacher. And to do so, we chose Elon Musk. We made a deep fake of Elon Musk, and we used a control character. And we had Elon Musk and
I am a virtual agent generator
this virtual non-existing person teach a class on video, basically, the exact same class. It's the exact same soundtrack and slides, but one has a little Elon Musk talking, another has this virtual character talking. And what we realized, and I have to say this was done before Elon Musk, before it was hard to find people that like him. So back then there were a lot of people that were like admiring him, and then some people that thought he was really annoying. And so we did this study, and we asked people afterwards about and the study was like the video that they were talking about was about vaccines. This was during the pandemic. We realized that based on whether people like Elon Musk or not, they were like, I'm interested in vaccines. I want to learn more about vaccines. That was such a great teacher, etc. While the people who hated Elon Musk were like, I don't want to learn about vaccines. And people who got this random, generic, neutral character, non-existing person actually, they sort of were in the middle. So you can really influence how people react to an AI, and as a consequence to the content that the AI presents, just by choosing what that AI looks like. We told people, these are deep fakes, it's not the real Elon Musk. Okay, so we continued this work by thinking, well, in learning, kids often have a hard time sort of learning history or being motivated to learn history. So we've been building systems where you can just chat with historical characters like Leonardo da Vinci, just by talking to him. And what we do is we actually, rather than just using ChatGPT and saying, hey, pretend you're Leonardo, we look at all the primary sources, the journals of Leonardo, as well as an autobiography, secondary choices. We extract the information from there to make sure we give correct information. And Leonardo can just talk to you, and you can ask, hey, what did you work on? Where did you live? Were you ever married? Show me your flying machines, etc. And we showed that people, again, are much more interested in learning about Leonardo this way than actually reading things about Leonardo or reading the same information. We've been looking at how AI can support attitude and behavior change. One of the most powerful things about AI, and the most scary, I would say, is that AI systems are persuasion machines, I think. They are incredibly, or they will be incredibly good at persuading people to change opinions, to change behavior. They can learn potentially from one user. At the moment, they're not doing that as much yet, but they will. So that they will learn, like, what do you care about? What makes you tick? How can I convince you of something? And of course, you can use that then as a good thing to help people with healthy choices in behavior or longer-term thinking and so on. Or you can use that in negative ways to manipulate people in political elections and so on. So we've been experimenting with this, working with Hal Hirschfield, who's a professor at UCLA, a psychologist who looks at behavior change and attitude change. And he's particularly interested in how we can encourage people to think more long-term, which, if we can do that, of course, that's what the climate crisis is all about. It could motivate us to help people change behavior, but also personal finance, kids studying, motivating them to study and do well in school and so on. Those are all problems of longer term thinking, basically, which people aren't naturally good at. And so we built a system where you can basically create an older version of yourself. You make a 60-year-old version of yourself by uploading a picture of yourself. It creates automatically what you're going to look like at age 60. And you tell the system, well, I think maybe I may want to become a biology teacher, and I would love to have a family, and I would love to live in the suburbs, etc. And the system creates this older version of you that you can talk to. And what is really interesting, our studies show, is that this really affects people in a deep way, that they can have this conversation with their older or a potential older self. So you can ask, like, what were some great moments about being a biology teacher? Or what were the times when you thought being a biology teacher is not so much fun? And of course, this is what ChatGPT is great at. There are so many teachers online that have said what the good and bad things are of being a teacher, being a doctor, being an engineer, etc. So you can really get them, but the system puts that in a very personal context and can sort of remind you how that relates to your other goals, etc. as well. And we show in our experiments that when people do this, as opposed to in an exercise where they reflect just by themselves about where they want to be when they're age 60, this has all sorts of positive consequences, that people think more long-term, start acting, changing their behavior to be more long-term oriented, etc., because they have had this experience. We started doing other experiments as well, like, can we help people with changing attitudes about things by having them interact with agents that are different from themselves? So we had an experiment where we basically first evaluated what people's attitudes were about a range of things, like whether they were more market-oriented or like equality-oriented, nation versus globe, etc. And then we gave them an agent that complemented them, that was actually the complement of their attitudes. And we had them come up with novel ideas regarding a particular problem while having a chat with that complementary agent, and while people thought the solutions they came up with were a little less effective than when they worked by themselves. They did say, the idea that I came up with working with this agent is more novel. And of course, researchers have shown also that if you come up with solutions to problems with more people involved from diverse backgrounds, that the solutions you come up with are better solutions. So this is a way to accomplish that without necessarily needing to put a lot of people in the room that have those different backgrounds. So I believe that AI that is designed to work with and for people can be effective and will go well beyond helping people with work. It will really help people with personal issues as well, these issues like motivation, attitude, behavior change, and many more. However, I do have to say in every talk about AI, there are still a lot of unresolved issues in AI that we have to be aware of, so use it at your own risk. These systems still do not have real understanding or real reasoning. I mean, although they are getting better every day, they always sound incredibly convincing, even when they're not right and they're hallucinating. And we don't know when they're hallucinating, and we don't understand their behavior, actually. Even the people that made them don't know when they're going to hallucinate and when they won't. These systems are biased because they're trained on data that is biased, and often we are not aware of the biases in the data. We don't understand, as I mentioned, these models and what their limitations are. There are no good methods of auditing these systems right now. There's very little transparency, very little interpretability. Companies that make the foundation models don't even tell us what data these systems are trained on. So you have no idea what the biases are, what the hallucinations might be. This is a huge problem, and you can't just rely on these systems if you don't know what data went in them in the first place. The rights of the original creators are often not respected in a lot of these models, and regulation and oversight is still sort of very much non-existent and is still being worked out by the different governments out there. And some governments, including the US, is sort of being more passive there and saying, well, the industry can regulate itself because otherwise they won't be able to compete with other countries, which personally I think is not the right thing to do. So lots of legal issues are unresolved, liability, copyright, etc. But I do believe it is mandatory for all of you in businesses to start experimenting with these systems, or you may potentially get left behind. Now, what to expect going forward? In the media, there's always, so much talk. Uh-oh. Can I go back to the last slide? Oh, over here, I see something else, sorry. So I mentioned there's a lot of unresolved issues, and personally, I think, next slide. Yeah, good. So will we ever get to AGI? In the press, it's always about, will we get to general artificial intelligence? That seems to be what everybody cares about. Well, one issue is nobody knows what that means. What is AGI, general AI? Will we get there with the current generative AI approach? We actually don't know. We don't have enough data potentially. We don't have enough hardware. We may not even have enough energy to run bigger models that could produce better results. So what is AGI, and should we aim for AGI? Why are we aiming for AGI? Why do we want to surpass people and replace people? And then give them all a basic income and let them do other stuff. I want to work. I don't want a basic income. I get a basic income at MIT as opposed to in industry. So should we care more about, or I think we should care more about how AI will impact society than about whether we will get to general AI. We should think about the emerging abundance of fake news, for example, which I think will influence or will make polarization, etc., even worse. We should think about AI content polluting the web and our data. Do you know that it may no longer be true today, but as of a few weeks ago, when you asked Google for a picture of a Vermeer painting, guess what it gave you? An AI-generated system, an AI-generated painting that looked like Vermeer. So this is a big problem that these data are being posted, or the results of AI, including the hallucinations and what it makes up, is all fed back into websites, then will be picked up again by other AI systems that train on this data, and ultimately the quality of the web, of AI, etc., will go down because of this feedback effect. Do we want machines to run our lives? I think that's a big question we should be asking ourselves. Do we not want like more of a hand in what is happening in the world and in what decisions get made about whether you're hired or fired or should get a promotion or things like that? Do we want machines selecting and creating all the content that we consume? Increasingly, as you know, AI is creating television shows, movies, not just the images, but also the scenarios and so on. Is that the world we want to live in? And of course, the massive energy use of these systems. They are in a major way contributing to global warming. So, and last, but again not least, I think they are possibly eroding a lot of the fun, pride, and fulfillment that we get out of doing work. It's not like all of us want to be automated by machines. We get satisfaction from contributing to society. So AI is here to stay, but will it live up to our expectations? Well, I think that depends on us, developers of these systems. I think we have to design and optimize AI to benefit people rather than aiming for AGI or general AI. And I think if we do so, we can guarantee that these systems actually live up to their expectations and improve our lives. Thank you.
All right, that was fascinating, Pattie. Thank you so much for this talk. And one thing I get is really how do we go from AI to what you called intelligence augmentation? Mm-hmm. That was extremely interesting examples. We have a lot of great questions online. So what I suggest is pick maybe the one that has the most votes.
So do you guys, can we put it up on that screen as well? Oh, there it is, yes. Yeah. So yeah, given potentially, I think that in a business context, we need different architectures for our AI systems. I mentioned the Leonardo system that we built a little while ago, where basically we decided first, like, oh, let's see what happens when ChatGPT pretends to be Leonardo da Vinci, and it was hallucinating all the time and giving us wrong information. So we came up with a different architecture for our system, which now is referred to as retrieval augmented AI. And in a business context, I highly recommend that you use that type of system. It's a system where when you ask for information from an AI, you actually, for the content of the answer, rely on private databases or specific knowledge bases. But for the style and for the communication, you rely on these conversational systems. So in our architecture, and this is now widely used and was not just developed by us, others developed it in parallel, you use ChatGPT to take some answer that you first look up in knowledge bases and databases of the documents, etc., of your company, and you just use the AI to frame that as an answer to the question that the person asked, and taking into account what you already talked about in the conversation and so on. So that's a way to avoid hallucinations in a business context. Yeah.
Great, thank you. We have time for one more question, so let's go with this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is what we're trying to avoid with the work that I am doing. You may have read that some companies, for example, OpenAI just announced that they are working with Johnny Ives, who designed all of the Apple iPhones and so on a new device that is basically using conversational AI as to replace really the cell phone. And I do believe that we will go in that direction, and it has many wonderful benefits because your personal AI, of course, will know what you're interested in, what you know, what you don't know, that you have particular memory problems in certain areas, but maybe not in others. It can teach you based on what you already know. Even for kids, kids could start learning from the environment around them just by talking to their AI, and their AI will know what their level of expertise and vocabulary and learning style is. It has wonderful possibilities, but of course, it means that people will largely interpret the world by through this AI system that assists them in making sense of the world around them. And I think it's incredibly important that we think about how we design that interaction. What is the knowledge, what are the decisions that people still have to make themselves, that they should not rely on the AI for? We have to ask these questions. Also, what knowledge, what skills should a person still have rather than relying on the AI or on giving them real-time answers to questions? I think that's one of the most important challenges of this era, actually, and I hope that many people will join me in working on this rather than aiming for AI that can surpass people and possibly replace them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pattie. Thank you. By the way, we were not able to address all the questions, but keep those questions coming. We will send them to Pattie later on, and you'll have a chance also to interact with her during one of the breaks. So we'll make sure we address all the questions and great questions that came up.